Why did you place him like that? What is happening? You sold so many things.
Units. The core of TFT gameplay mechanics are the units that fight for you within the game. Building your first comp is the gateway to learning how to play the game in your own unique way. To start making a good comp, it all comes down to balancing a good frontline with a good backline. Determining what unit is frontline or backline usually comes from the ability that the unit uses. You can see this by watching the unit in combat or right-clicking them to read their ability. You can also see how much armor or magic resist they have, with 40 or lower mostly being backline units, and 50 or higher mostly being frontline units. Units that can bolster themselves with shields or stats, offer CC, or have high base resistances are all normally frontline units. Units that mostly deal damage, can attack from range, or provide scaling over time can be categorized as backline units or damage dealers. The most common way to play the game is by protecting your backline units with your frontline units, by putting the frontline units all the way in the front, and the backline units all the way in the back. There are some exceptions, but for the sake of clarity, we will keep it simple by splitting each row on the board into frontline rows and backline rows. The first two rows serve the purpose for your main tanks and secondary tanks, and the third and fourth row serve the purpose of secondary damage and main damage. Once you've built your first comp, you can start upgrading the units to a 2-star or a 3-star version by getting 3 or 9 copies respectively to give them stronger base stats or stronger abilities. After you've started constructing a few frontline units with a few backline units, you can start to understand the role of the synergy bar. The left side of the screen, there will appear a lot of different synergies as you add units to the board. Hovering over each synergy shows all the units that share that synergy. TFT offers a few compositions that give players a template of what a balanced team can look like. In set 8.5, Anima Squad and Infinity Team are good examples of the starts of what a comp can look like. These vertical compositions offer a balance between frontline and backline, with extra slots to fill out what your comp currently lacks. Reading each synergy can give you an idea of how it helps a comp function. The frontline synergies can add armor or magic resist, health, give damage reduction, or a shield. The backline synergies can offer a damage boost, scaling, mana generation, or any other means of doing damage, like spawning things. Understanding what synergies help your carries the best shows what synergies you'd like to spec into. These synergies can highlight a win condition for your comp. If your carry wants to scale for a long time, you'd need a strong frontline. With a lot of front-loaded damage, you can get by with a weaker frontline as long as you have a lot of front-loaded damage to win the fight very quickly. Mana generation is another win condition for a lot of ability power focused comps, where you'd have to cast as much as possible to win a fight. Using the right synergies and investing more or less into each synergy is a part of playing toward your win condition, or even against an opponent's win condition. Bro, what the fuck? Each unit has a role that they fulfill within each comp. Front-loading your damage means you need to win on the first cast and slowly clean up the rest of the fight by your second cast. Backloading your damage or playing for scaling means you want the fight to last as long as possible, and that you want to outlast your opponent in a longer fight. One of these options means focusing your synergies and items on enhancing your damage as much as possible. The other option means focusing your synergies and items on soaking up as much damage as possible. Ideally, in TFT, we find a balance between both options to have good frontline and backline. Being able to fulfill both of these win conditions with a frontline that soaks as much damage as possible, and a backline that does as much damage as possible is how I understand the game. Maximizing between tank and damage, starting with your units, is the basis of everything in TFT. It helps you stay stable, use money wisely, create crazy comps, and maximize placement from game to game. Learning how to round out your comp will now come from watching the fights and assessing the roles of each unit you've placed. Using the sidebar, you can see how much damage a unit dealt, blocked, healed, resisted, and the star level of each unit. All of these are important in contributing information of what you need to continue synergizing with, upgrading, or how to change up your positioning a little bit. Sometimes you'll even find hidden synergies between units and how they interact with one another, but only if you pay enough attention to the fights. Finally, to cap out your board, you need to start asking questions like, how do I help my main carry function better? Are my main tanks soaking most of the damage? And is my comp structured in a way that every single unit is doing their job within my comp? As you ask these questions, you start to make your comp a lot stronger by adding what is needed, subtracting what is not, and upgrading what is working. Then you can start thinking about countering other comps. Try your best to keep the frontline and backline balanced throughout the game and assess the role of each unit you're playing to build the strongest army possible. Thanks for watching, and good luck cooking.